How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chav Gimel, Daf 23 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, yo friends. Today we get into an interesting sugya. Sugya. Is that like the way that people say it? The people who say things properly? Okay. Today we're talking about simanim, I guess, like signs on lost things. And so like simona asu lemidrasa, is that what it's called? Like whatever. We're gonna see stuff. Yeah, let's go. So I think it's gonna be a big daf today because we have about half an hour to do on Chav Beis. But it's all just like a big kind of, this machlokas goes on for a while, so I figured let's just start at the beginning of it. Anyways, I think it's gonna be a cool daf. Okay, we're gonna start at daf Chav Beis Amud Beis, about halfway through the Amud at the two dots. Krichos b'shus harab or elu shelo. Okay, very interesting stuff. So if there are small little sheaves of wheat in the Rishus Harabim, so Harei Elu Shelo, they're his. Okay, he could take them, finders, keepers, and he doesn't need to announce it or anything like that. Omer Rabba says Rabba va'afilu b'davar sheyesh bo simin. So we can say machlokes Rabba and Rava. I feel like I seem to have some kind of a recollection from 7th grade of there being some kind of like us learning about some kind of machlokas between Rabba and Rava. And I guess the point was that it's like really confusing and we shouldn't confuse Rabba and Rava. I think that's probably about what I remember from the machlokas. Okay, so let's go a little deeper this time. Omer Rabba v'afilu b'davar sheyesh bo simin. Oh, yeah, there's no way that I knew the opinion of Rabba. Anyways. Or how to not confuse it with Rava. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't know what was going on. Amar Rabba says Rabba v'afilu b'davar sheyesh bo simin. Take 3. So even if there is some kind of a sign, some kind of indication, some kind of indicator on this wheat, on these little sheaves, still harei elu shelo, he can keep them. Even though there's some kind of a siman on it, still he can keep them. So Rabba holds simon asu lidaris lo have siman, that a siman that's going to get walked all over, right? That if you have a sign on it, but it's going to get trampled on it and like ruined, so then it's not considered a siman anymore. Rava Amar lo shanu ela b'davar she'ein bo siman. Whereas Rava disagrees. Interesting that Rava is disagreeing with Rabba. After all, Rava was a student of Rabba. But anyways, okay. But Rava, I think Rava is a little bit, sometimes he argues with earlier generations, I think. Rava Amar lo shanu ela b'davar she'ein bo simin. So Rava says that, no, when we say that these little sheaves, harei elu shelo, we can keep them, so that's so long as there is no identifying mark on them, as long as there's no simin. Aval b'davar sheyesh bo simin, but if it has a simin on it, so then chayiv lachris, you wouldn't be allowed to just keep it. Chayiv lachris, there you go. Alma kasava Rava, so we see that Rava's opinion is simin asu lidaris, that a simin that is going to get trampled on and ruined, have a simin is nonetheless a simin, and therefore these krichos b'shus harabim, if they have a simin on them, chayev lehachriz. V'kalam demasni leha shmaita bam penafsha. To those who teach this machlokas just sort of on its own, independently, and not necessarily tied to these krichos b'shus harabim, and simply simin or asu lidaris, that when it comes to a simin or asu lidaris, a simin that will be trampled on, Rabba Amar lo have a simin. Rabba says that it's no longer a simin, it is not considered a simin. Where am I? Rava Amar says Rabba have a simin. No, it's nonetheless a simin. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, krichis b'shus harabim are elu shelo B'shus hayachid, no, b'shus hayachid notel umachriz. Okay, wait, what? Wait, where am I? Yeah, Tanan. Where is this Mishnah? Oh, maybe this is later on. Wait, where is this Vav? Is this maybe on Daf Chafei maybe? What do we mention? No? Krichos? No. Krichos b'shusa yachid. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Mishnah of Chafei Mural. So where are we? So Tanan, Krichos b'shusa rabim are elu shelo. So we said in our Mishnah that these Krichos in b'shusa rabim you can keep. B'shusa yachid, but in the Mishnah of Chafei, it says no telu machris. You take them and you announce them. You take them and you announce them. So Echidami, what's the deal with these kriches that in Rishus HaRabim you can keep them, in Rishus HaYachid you have to announce them? If there's no simin on it whatsoever, so then even in Rishus HaYachid I would think that you should be able to keep it. Rishus HaYachid my machis, what's there to announce in Rishus HaYachid? There's no simin on it, there's no sign on it. So what are you going to announce? So Elalav the Isbu Simon. So rather, it must be that there is a sign on it. There is an identifying mark on it. And nonetheless, we're saying that even though there's a siman in Rishus HaRabim, you can keep it. So Alma Siman also does lo have a siman. So it would therefore sound, we've just proven that it must be that these krichos have a siman, and even so in Rishus HaRabim Hare'elu Shelo, because simin also lidores loy have simin. Tuvta de Rave, it's a kasha on Rave. Amalach Rave. Rave will respond, Olam tleis bu simin, Rave will say nisht. We're talking about where there's no simin, and that's why in Rishus HaRabim Hare'elu Shelo. Okay, but then why, if there's no simin, then how come in Rishus HaYachid chayv lahachris? And you're saying, well then, in Rishus HaYachid, what is there to announce? I'll tell you what there is to announce. Machriz mokim. You announce the place. You say, people, listen up. People, I found Epis in this place. If anybody lost anything there, come and tell me what you lost, and I'll tell you if it's what I found. That's what he announces. Even if there's no siman on it, right? You could the object itself is sort of the identifying thing. Just say where you found it, and anybody who lost something there can come and tell you what they claim to have lost, and if it matches what you found, so then you can return it. Whereas Rabbah says simply a place is not enough to be considered a simin. That is not something that you would have to announce. You don't announce, I found something in this place. That when it comes to a place, Rabbah says a place would not be considered a simin, whereas Rabbah says a place would be considered a simin. Tashma, come in here. Krichis birshus harabim Hare'elu Shelo Rishus HaYachid Notel Umachris V'Ha'alumis Bein Rishus HaRabim Uvein Rishus HaYachid Notel Umachris. Let's read that again. Tashma. Krichis Rishus HaRabim. So when it comes to these small sheaves in Rishus HaRabim Hare'elu Shelo, as we know, you can keep Rishus HaYachid Notel Umachris. In Rishus HaYachid, you take them and you announce them. V'Ha'alumis, the big sheaves, Bein Rishus HaRabim uvein Rishus HaYachid notel umachriz. Whether you find the big sheaves in Rishus HaRabim or Rishus HaYachid, you must announce them. So Rabbe Echi Mitaritzla v'Rabbe Echi Mitaritzla. So how does each one explain Pshat? How come the small ones, there's a distinction between Rishus HaRabim and Rishus HaYachid, and how come the big ones, there is no distinction between Rishus HaRabim and Rishus HaYachid? Either way, you have to be machriz. Rabbi Mataritz L'Taimei b'simin, Rabbi Mataritz L'Taimei b'mokim. So Rabba explains that it's talking about where there's a simin, And Rave explains that it's talking about Mokim. Let's see. Rab Mitar's the time. Okay, so Rabba explains the distinction between the small sheaves and the big sheaves. Rabba Mitar's the time b'simin, to say that it's talking about where there's a simin on it. And of course, Rabba holds simin also lidoris lav siminu. Krichis b'shus harabim areelu shaloi. So when it comes to the small sheaves in Rishus Harabim, so he can keep it because Mishum Dimedrusa, because people are going to step on it and the siman is going to get ruined. Therefore, Hareelu Shaloi Rishus Hayochid. But if you find the sheaves, the small sheaves with the siman in Rishus Hayochid, no telemachris, you take it and you announce the lo medrusa because nobody's stepping on it and there's a siman. And therefore, you have to announce it. V'alumis, when it comes to the big sheaves, bein b'shus harabim uvein b'shus hayachid, regardless of if we're talking about in b'shus harabim or b'shus hayachid, no tulumachris, you have to announce them. You have to take them and announce them. Kevon digvion loy medrusa, because since they're big, people aren't stepping on them. A small little shivala, so you step on it. A big sheav, you avoid. You're not going to step on it. So therefore, since you're not going to step on it, so even Rishus Harabim, the siman remains intact, and therefore Chayiv La'achriz, Bein Rishus Harabim, Bein Rishus Hayochid, the only time when you don't need a bimachriz, when it's Hareelu Shaloi, is in Rishus Harabim by the small sheaves. Because then it would be a siman or also lidaris, and according to Rabba Loi, have a siman, it would not be considered a siman. Okay? And Rava explains the distinction in his way, right? Rava says that we're talking about where there's no siman on it, right? So where am I? Rav Matar Tzitayme b'mokim, that the identifying thing is the place. Krichis b'Rishus Harabim, so the small sheaves in Rishus Harabim, Hareelu Shalo, the Minshtafa, reminds me of that German beer, Weinstaffen. The Minshtafa, because the thing is that the small sheaves are they move around, they're small, right? So where you drop it is not necessarily where you find it. You drop it in one place and it gets kicked around and this and that, and it ends up in a totally different place. So if you come and say, I found that piece in this place, nobody is necessarily going to come and say, oh yeah, I lost my sheaves there, because they didn't lose their sheaves. They lost their sheaves somewhere else, and they went. People were kicking them and thising and thatting them until they got to this other place. So that there's no point in announcing anything. But b'shus hayachid chayiv la'achriz, of course, b'shus hayachid you would have to announce it because it's not going anywhere and it's got a siman on it. Do a little minshtafa because it's not going nowhere. Ve'alumis, and when it comes to big sheaves, so bein b'shus harabim, bein b'shus hayachid no tolu machriz, whether b'shus harabim, whether b'shus hayachid, you take them and you announce them because came the akiri lo minshtafa. Because since the big ones are big, they're not going anywhere. And therefore, even in Rishus Harabim, it's not going nowhere. And you can say, look, I found these big old sheaves. Well, you say, I found that piece. In Rishus Harabim, somebody could say, oh yeah, I lost big old sheaves. And you can say, oh, I found big old sheaves, and you can give them back. Okay. Givol dig. Tashma, come in here. Kikaris shel nachtom. The, breads of a baker. We had said in our Mishnah that the breads of the baker are elu shelo, you can keep. Now, the Mishnah on Daf Chof Hey, in 2 days from now, is going to say that kikor shel bal abayis, that the loaves of a home baker, of a private citizen, chayv lahachris, you would have to announce because it's got a sign on it, meaning because it's unique. When you buy it from the bakery, and you go to the bakery in Shuk Machne Yehuda, they all look the same. Or at least, you won't be able to identify with a person, right? So, even if every bakery has their own kind of style or whatever, but still, you don't know who lost it, per se. I guess, is that the point? It's not super unique. Whatever. A person makes his own challah, so it's going to be different than everybody else's. But a bakery one, there's tons of them, I guess. Kikar shel nachtom, so hare elu shelo. So the loaves of bread of a baker So if you find a loaf of bread of a baker, so you can keep, because there's nothing unique about it. Hashal balabayis, but the bread of a home baker, chayiv lahachriz, you would have to announce. Shabalabayis my taima. How come the balabayis you have to announce that you found it? Came the isbu simin. Well, because it has a sign on it, it's unique. The made idea rifted the inish who, because be'etzim a person's bread, I don't know, a person's bread is him, meaning, it's a personal thing. You can identify somebody's bread with their baking style. Veloshno rishus harabim, veloshno rishus hayochid, and there's no difference between if you find it in rishus harabim or if you find it in rishus hayochid. So we're saying that a privately baked bread is a simin, right? Because it's unique, and we're saying even rishus harabim, it maintains its simin. So we see that simin asulidaris remains a simin. It's a kasha on Rabbi. Amalach Rabbi. Rabbi will say, Hosam hainu taima no bara da 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 that no, Rabbi of course is going to maintain his opinion. Simin asuli dares loy have simin. Right? If it normally gets trampled on, it's no longer a simin. So then how do you explain the kikaros shel balabayis that we say chayav lehachriz? But aren't they getting trampled on? The answer is no, they're not getting trampled on, because who's going to trample on food? We're not going to pass by food. If you find food, you pick it up, and you don't just leave it there. And therefore, it will never get to a point where it's getting where food is getting trampled on. And therefore, kikar shel balabais, you announce, because the siman is going to be intact, and therefore you have to say, hey, I found the bread, tell me about it. Vayika Nachrim. What about the Nachrim? The Nachrim might not necessarily have this concept of Ein Marvir and Ala Ochlin. Nachrim Chai Shelech Shafim. Yeah, but the Nachrim are concerned about witchcraft. Like, why is there bread in the middle of the road? Which witch left bread in the middle of the road? And they'll be all freaked out, so they're not going to touch it either. Vayika Behema V'Klovim. What about the fact that animals and dogs can kind of step on it? Pastor D'Lo Shchicha Behema V'Klovim. It's in a place, it's not like where I live, where there's dogs and all sorts of animals running around, and that's why we need the power washers. Although the power washers, I think, are more for the human waste than for the animal waste. But I'll go upon him. Anyways, so it's in a nicer neighborhood where animals and also people don't make a mess. And I'll go upon him. So where are we? Yeah. And where were we? What were we saying? Right, the bread. Right. So the people aren't going to step on aren't going to ruin the bread, the siman, the bread, and the neither will the dogs, because there are no dogs and animals and stuff. So, but if it was a place where it would get ruined, so Rabbi would maintain that the siman asolidaris loy have a siman. Okay. Lema. Kitanoe bam param. Let's say that the machloikes between Rabba and Rava, that by siman also lidores, is it a siman like Rava says, or is it not a siman like Rabba says? So lema kitanoe. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol dover sheyesh bo shinoi chayev lehachriz. Says Rabbi Yehuda that anything that is unique, you must announce. Anything that has a siman, you have to announce. Ketzad, for example, matzah igul. If a fellow finds a round fig cake, uvsocho cheres, and inside is a shard of pottery, that is unique. Kikar v'socho maos, bread, and inside is money. Michlal, the Tanakama Sovar, Hare Elu Shelo. Ho 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 ho. Implying that the Tanakama holds Hare Elu Shelo. So, for example, if you have igul of socho cheres, you have a round fig cake, and inside is a shard of pottery. Rabbi Yehuda says that is a siman. Well, Rabbi Yehuda says chayiv lahachriz, and the Tanakama, so implying that the Tanakama would argue and say eino chayiv lahachriz. You don't need harei elu shelo. It's yours. Savur d'chulei alma. Here we go, friends. Savur d'chulei alma simin abame elav have simin. So let's say that both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda agree that a simin abame elav, something that just happens on its own. For example, a shard of pottery falling into a round fig cake is nonetheless considered. It would be considered a appropriate simin, a valid simin. Okay, so the shard of pottery in the round fig cake would be considered a siman. Okay. We want to assume right now that both according to the Tanakama and according to Rabbi Yehuda, ma'avirin ala ochin. People could wouldn't necessarily go and pick up the ochlin and salvage it, but people could end up trampling on it and potentially ruining that siman. Okay, so now you have a siman now you have a scenario of simina asui lidoris. So then now the Tanakama is saying harei elu shelo. Rabbi Yehuda is saying chayiv lahachriz. Sounds like the machlokas is the siman intact, like Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying, and therefore chayiv lahachriz, or is the siman considered ruined and harei elu shelo? You can therefore keep it. That would be like Rabbah. So my lab the siman arsli doris kamiflagei. Let's say that the machlokes between Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda is pumped the same thing that Rabbi and Rava are arguing about. My sovereign lo yave simin. So Tanakama says it would not be considered a simin, and therefore harei elu shelo, and that would be like what Rabbi is saying. My sovereign ave simin, and Rabbi Yehuda is saying that it is a simin, and therefore chayiv lahachris, and that is like Rava says. Omer Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid says, no way, no how. That's what he says. Rav Zvid Mishmei Derava says Rav Zvid Mishmei Derava. People, listen up, people. If you really think that the Tanakama holds simin or asu lidoris lo yave simin, if you really think that the Tanakama holds simin or asu lidoris lo yave simin, then you're in trouble. Umavirin ala ochlin, and also people don't immediately pick up food and they pass by it and it gets trampled, well then you're in trouble. Because the Mishnah says, on Daf Chafei, kikris shel balabayis b'rshus harabim amay machris. Because the Mishnah says, on Daf Chafei, that kikris shel balabayis in rshus harabim, you have to announce them. But if the Tanakama, and the Mishnah on Chafei is assuming is the Tanakama, is the same Tana as the Tanakama, so if we're saying that ma'avirin ala ochlin, so people are gonna, so the bread's gonna end up getting trampled on, and we're saying that simin asu lidares lo yave simin, so then this kikros shel balabayis, which is unique, but is gonna end up getting trampled on, and you're saying that simin asu lidares lo yave simin is not a simin, then why would the Tanakama say on Daf Chafei chayiv lahachriz that you have to announce it? I thought it's not a simin. So clearly, something is messed up over here. Elo amar Rav Zvid mishmei derava. Rather, says Rav Zvid mishmei derava, the chulei alma savrei simin ha'asli darei savei simin. Ho 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 ho. That Rava, of course, is going to argue that everybody agrees that simin ha'asli daris have simin would be considered, that even if it gets trampled on, it still would be a simin, and that can explain why we say in the Mishnah Daf Chafei that kikr shel balabayis b'shus harabim chayiv lahachris, because it remains a simin. So then what's pshat over here? Why does the Tanakama say that what are we talking about again? That by the igule dveila, that the eagle v'yesh b'socho cheres. How come the Tanakama says harei elu shelo? right? So where am I? So the chuli alma savi simin asli dar is a have simin uma'avirin ala ochlin. And that people don't necessarily pick up the food and they leave it there, it gets trampled on. The machlokas between the Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to the eagle, the Eish B'socho Cheres, is simply a question of, is that pottery actually considered a simin? If it's a simin, then sure, everyone would agree, simin asli daris have a simin. The question is it a simin bichlal? The Tanakh suffer simin abba me'elev lo yave simin. The Tanakh says that a simin abba me'elev is not a simin bichlal, and therefore Re'elu shalo. Rabbi Yehuda suffer have a simin. And Rabbi Yehuda says that it is a simin, and therefore chayav lahachris. So everyone agrees, simin asli daris have a simin, argues Rav. The question is it a simin bichlal? Tanakh would say that a shard of pottery falling into igul shel dvele is not a simin bichlal, and therefore Arielu shelo. Rabba Amar, Rabba of course is going to counter and he's going to argue and he's going to say, Amar lach duchuli alma simin asli daris lo yave simin ve'ein ma'avirin ala oichlin. Everybody, 1 second. Okay, fine. So Rabba is going to explain that both Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda hold that simin asli daris lo have simin. That of course Rabba says that simin asli daris lo have simin. Okay, so then the question is going to be, then what's pshat with kikros shel balabais? The ein ma'avirin ala ochlin, and you don't pass by food, right, without picking it up. So you're going to pick it up, which would then explain the kikros shel balabais. Okay, so again, I probably shouldn't mention the kikros shel balabais. That's just going to confuse things. The Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda arguing about the eagle of Socho Cheres. So everybody agrees simin asli daris have lo have a simin. Okay, ve'ein ma'avirin ala ochlin, and we don't pass over food. Okay, fine. The machlokas is regarding simin haba me'elav. Tanakh holds lo ave simin, that it is not bichlal a simin. Okay, and therefore, if it's not a simin, so then harei elu shalo. Rabbi Yehuda savar have a simin, and Rabbi Yehuda says that a taka is a simin. And therefore, and because of ein ma'avirin ala ochlin, so memele it's not going to get trampled, and therefore it's a simin, and therefore chayiv lahachus according to Rabbi Yehuda. Ikadamar, are those who say savua. So there are those who basically say the same kind of machlokas and back and forth between Rabba and Rava and simin asli daris have a simin or not have a simin. So there are those who apply it in the following way. So very similar, but in the following way. Ikadamar, those who say savua d'chuli alma simin abba me'elav have a simin. So initially we want to say that everybody agrees, both Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda agree that simin abba me'elav have a simin. That a simin abba me'elav have a simin. That when this shard falls into the eagle shel devela, it would be considered a simin. How in the world are 10-year-olds supposed to understand this? I'm having like a hard time keeping everything straight. Maybe it's because of the third episode I'm recording today, so my brain is starting to become mush, but I still have another one to record. But no, this must be difficult for 10-year-olds, right? Probably. All right, that's okay. Those say that everyone agrees that this shard that falls into the eagle shel devela is considered a simin. Okay, and that a simin that normally gets trampled on would not be considered a simin, but my love, and therefore the machloks between the Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda is whether people would pass over food or pick it up. The Marsav Ma'avirin, that the Tanakh holds that you would pass over it and therefore would end up getting trampled, and simin abba me'elav and simin asli daris lo have a simin. So therefore it's harei elu shelo. Umay sofer ein ma'avirin, and Rabbi Yehuda holds ein ma'avirin, and therefore you'd pick it up, and therefore it is a simin, and therefore chayiv lahachris. Omer of Zvid, mishmei de Rove, if it enters your mind that the Tanakama old simin or osuli dares lo yave simin, that a simin that gets trampled would not be considered a simin. Umavirin ala ochlin, and people were to pass over the ochlin, and therefore it's getting ruined. Therefore, the simin is getting ruined, and that is why re'elu shelo. But if that's the case, that a simin can get ruined if it gets trampled, well then kikro shabal habayis. Then how do we explain the Mishnah Daf Chafei? The kikro shabal habayis b'rshus harab ma'may machris. How come the Tanakama would say that you would announce it? After all, it would get trampled. It would be simin osuli daris lav siminu. Why would you have to announce it? Elo Amar of Zvid, Mishmei de Rava. Rather, if Zvid says in the name of Rava, Techule Ama Savri Simin Osuli Doris Have Simin. That no, both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda hold that Simin Abame'ela, Simin Osuli Doris is considered a Simin. That's Rava's opinion. Umavirin ala Ochlin, we pass over the Ochlin. Simply the machlokas is with regard to this simin abame'elav, a simin that kind of comes on its own, like this shard falling into the eagle shel dvela. And Tanakama says simin abame'elav lo ave simin. Tanakama says that it would not be considered a simin, and therefore are'elu shelo. Rabbi Yehuda sover ave simin. Rabbi Yehuda says that it would be a simin, and therefore chayav lehachris. V'Rabba amalach, Rabba will reply duchuli amma simin osli daris lo ave simin. Rabba will say that according to everybody, both Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, simin osli daris would not be considered a simin. Ve'ein ma'avirin ala ochlin, and we don't pass over the food. Okay, fine. Ve'acha b'simin abame'elav kamifagei, and the machlokas is with regard to simin abame'elav. Tanakama holds simin abame'elav lo yave simin, that if a simin abame'elav would not be considered a simin, and therefore there's no simin here. For Rabbi Yehuda savar have a simin, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that it would be considered a simin, and therefore chayiv lahachris. Amar Zvid Mishmei de Rava says Zvid Mishmei de Rava. Klala de avidta ua chever. This is a cloud. There's a general rule when it comes to lost object. Kev de Amar vayle lechesrin kis. Miya'ish le mina. That when a person says, "Oy gewalt, I've lost stuff," that's yeush. Ve'omar miya'ish le mina. Ve'omar of Zvid Mishmei de Rava says Zvid Mishmei de Rava al ilchasa. The halacha is kriches b'shus harabim. When it comes to these little sheaves in rishus harabim, hare'elu shelo, he can keep them. B'shus hayachid, when it comes to rishus hayachid, iderech nefila hare'elu shelo. In Rishus HaYachid, if they just kind of fell there, so then he can keep them. I derech hanocha notel machas, but if they've been placed there, so then he needs to announce them. But that specifically, this distinction between if they fell there or if they were placed there is only when there is no simin. But if there is a simin, loshna b'rishus harabim, v'loshna b'rishus hayachid, bein derech nefila, bein derech hanocha, chayiv la'achris. But if there's a simin, so now I don't care if it's Rishus HaRabim, I don't care if it's Rishus HaYachid, I don't care if it's Nefila, I don't care if it's Hanocha, Chayav Le'achris. Woo! Oh my gosh! Oh, my brain is definitely mush. Alright, Chevre, push through the mush. What do you want me to tell you? But that was the Givaldiga Machlokas, Rabba and Rava about Simin Abame'elav. Stuff is so geschmack. Rav is arguing with everybody. Rav is pretty hardcore, Lamaisa. Rav is arguing with Abai, he's arguing with Rabba. Some pretty geschmack stuff. Umachruza shaldogim, strings of fish. I don't know. I'm imagining kind of like smoked fish, even though it's probably any fish. But like, I feel like you see that, right? These like strings with like smoked fish, kind of like hanging on them. But I imagine that we're not talking about smoked fish per se, we're talking about like regular fish, but okay. Strings of fish. Amai lehave kesher simin. But why is this hare'elu shelo? Shouldn't there not be a unique identifier? a UID? Bikatra ditzayada. Well, it's a fisherman's knot. All fishermen knot with fishermen's knots. So there's nothing uniquely identifiable about that. We'll have a minyan siman. What about the number? Right? If there's 10 fish on this string, shouldn't that be a siman? Like, hey, I got 10 fish on there. Oh, okay, then it's yours. But everyone puts 10 fish. There's like a standard kind of fisherman thing, which is a string of fish is tied with a fisherman's knot, and it's got 10 fish on there. That's a string of fish. Bo minyan of sheshes minyan ave siman o lo ave siman. In general, is a number considered a siman? If you say that, I lost 3 M&Ms. Is that a siman? So Amalu of Sheshes says to them, Tenisua, we learned in a Braisa, Motze klei chesed, or klei nechoshes. A fellow finds silver vessels or copper vessels, gastron shel aver v'chol klei matechos, or pieces of lead or other metals. Harei ze lo yachzir, do not return them, ad sheyitain, until the claimer gives os, a sign, o ad she yichavin mishkalosav, until he can tell you how much it weighs. Umi the mishkal ave simin, and if weight is considered simin, mida, I guess size, uminyan, and number, nami have simin, would also be considered an identifier that you can rely upon. V'chaticho shel basar v'chulei, and pieces of flesh, pieces of meat. Areelu shelo amai. Why can you keep them? Le'avim mishkala simin. Shouldn't the weight be an identifying siman? B'mishkala d'shavin. Yeah, but it's a standard weight that I guess all the butchers would cut meat into that standard weight. V'dav chaticha gufa siman. But shouldn't the cut itself be a siman? O de dafka, o de atma, from the neck or from the leg, the thigh. Milotani. After all, don't we learn in a brisa motza chatichis dogim? If a fellow finds pieces of fish, and we're assuming what that means is like maybe from the head or from the tail, or v'dog noshuch, or a fish with a bite out of it. Chayiv la'achriz, you have to announce about it. So we want to assume that there's a specific a cut of a fish, and we're saying chayiv la'achriz. So if you have a specific cut of meat, like a steak or something, you should have to announce that. No. Chavir shel yayin, barrels of wine, v'shel shemen, or of oil, v'shel tvu, or of wheat, v'shel grogris, or dried figs, v'shel zeisim, or olives. Harei elu shelo, you can keep those. So, but we said that these pieces of fish, and we want to assume that like a specific piece of fish, like from the head or the tail or something, you would have to announce. So then, if you have a specific piece of flesh, like a steak or something, so you should have to announce that, no? No, by the fish we're talking about the simona bipsaka. No, it was cut in a unique way. Kihad Rabba bar Rav Huna, like Rabba bar Rav Huna mechatechle atilsa karnisa. The Rabba bar Rav Huna, if he wanted to send some meat to his wife, and he would send it with a shaliach who was an ochri. So then he would cut it into a triangle. That was like his sign that his wife would see the meat cut in a triangle. Like, okay, I know that's how my husband sends it, and that would be cool, and she would know that it's his. Also, you can infer from the fact that in the brisa, right? So it says chatichos dogim is right next to the dog noshuch. I think a dog noshuch means a fish with a bite taken out of it, something uniquely identifiable about it. So also the chatichos dogim means that it was cut in a specific way. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean a particular cut of the animal. Omer Mar, we said, chavius shel yayin, barrels of wine, v'shel shemen, or of oil, v'shel tvua, or of wheat, v'shel grogris, or dried figs, v'shel zeisim, or of olives, hari elu sheloy, you can keep them. V'hotnan, but we learn in the Mishnah, kade yayin v'chade shemen, when it comes to jugs of wine or of oil, chayiv la'achriz, you have to announce them. So what's pshat? Is it Arei Elu Shelo, like we're saying in the Brisa, or like the Mishnah says, Chayiv La'achris? Omer Bzeire, Omer Rav, Masnisin Birashum. That the Mishnah which says Chayiv La'achris is Birashum. apparently, what they would do is they would when they would make wine, they would store it away in these earthenware jugs or whatever, and it would, I guess, ferment and stuff. And then when it came time to sell them to wholesale, so the buyers, the stores and stuff who would sell them, apparently, I think this is my understanding, they would come and then they would open up the jug so that they can kind of taste it and see what they're buying. And then after that, they would close it again and then reseal it. Once that was resealed, so that reseal is considered a simin and therefore chayiv lahachris. Michal de Braisa b'pasuch, does that imply that the Braisa, when it says Harei elu shelo, is talking about where the jugs are open? But if it was open, if it was intentionally left open, then clearly the owner is indicating that he doesn't care about it, in which case, of course, Harei elu shelo. Omer Voshaya b'matzif. Says Rav Oshaya, it's talking about, well, no, what happened was the jugs were sealed, and then when it came time for the buyers to check it out, they opened it, and then they covered it again, but didn't quite seal it once again. And in that case, we're saying Harei elu shelo. Okay, fine. Okay. Abaye Omer says Abaye, afilu, because I guess there's nothing identifiable about it until they reseal it. Abaye Omer says Abaye, afilu tema idi v'idi b'roshim. You can even say both the Braisa and the Mishnah are talking about where it was resealed already. It depends. If it was before the storage houses were opened up and demoed to the store, to the buyers, so if before that time you have a jug that was already resealed, that would be unique and that would be a siman and chayiv lahachris. But if it was after that time, when all the jugs are basically resealed, so then Harei elu shelo wouldn't be a unique identifier. Kiha, de Rav Yaakov bar Abba, it's like Rav Yaakov bar Abba, ashkicha chavisa dechamra la'achar sheniftechu otzos, that he found a barrel of wine after the warehouses were opened up for the buyers. Also, the Kami de Abaye, and he came before Abaye to kind of figure out, so now what do I do? Do I have to announce it or what? Amalei Abaye zil shkol l'nafshach, and Abaye says to him, look, you can keep it because once the warehouses have been opened up for the people to check out, all the barrels at that point are going to be resealed, and there's nothing unique about it. But Amini Rebbeivai Rav Nachman, Rebbeivai asked Rav Nachman, Mokim avesimin lo avesimin. Rebbeivai asked Rav Nachman, is the place considered a simin or not? Right? Rav had said earlier that, right, I don't even remember what's what anymore. Was that today's daf? I think it was today's daf. I don't remember what's what. I'm literally, this is the third daf of BavaMetzia. I've done all of BavaMetzia so far today, and I'm doing another daf, so I don't even remember what's on what daf, but I think the whole thing about Mokim was here? Or no, was that yesterday's daf? I have no clue. No, I think it's today's daf. I have no clue. Where am I? So, right, so Rav had said that you announced the place. So Rebbeivai asked Rav Nachman, Mokum avesimin or lo avesimin, is the place considered a unique identifier or not? That you say, look, I found that piece in this place, and somebody could say, oh, I lost that piece in this place. So Omer le tnisu. So Rav Nachman says, well, we have a brayso. Motze chovius shel yain v'shel shemen v'shel tvua v'shel grogers v'shel zeismer elu shelo. Well, we learned in that brayso that if you find these barrels of stuff, wine, olives, whatever, you can keep it. It's yours. And if it enters your mind that the place where you find it would be considered an identifiable simin, lichros makom, well then you should announce that at least. So from the fact that we don't say announce where you found it and then let people come and say what they lost there, Rav Nachman says that's an indication that makom is not part of the whole simin thing. Rav Zvid says, I don't know about that brayso where we don't say anything about makom. Hachab ma'eskinon. What are we talking about over there? Biraksa denaire, where they were found at the seashore. The seashore is where all the boats come in and they unload their stuff. So therefore, it's like it's like going to the fish market and saying I lost a fish. Going to the fish, or somebody says oh, I found something in the fish market, and you say, oh yeah, I lost a fish. That's not going to be much of a simin. Fish it's pretty obvious that there's going to be fish over there. So here also, Kilu, the reason why these barrels we don't suggest that. Why don't you announce the place where you found them? Because you found them on the seashore, where that's where all the trade comes in. Then there's tons of barrels there. Somebody says, "Oh, I found something on the seashore," and somebody says, "Oh yeah, I lost a barrel there." Duh. So therefore, that's why in this case you wouldn't announce the place, but maybe in other places the place would be significant. So Amar of Mari says, "Mari, my taima Amar Abanan Raksa Denar Lo Ave Simin." Why do the rabbis say that the seashore would not be considered a simin? Because we say to the person who says, "Oh, I lost a barrel at the seashore," yeah, duh. Just like you lost a barrel here, your friend also lost a barrel here. The whole place thing isn't going to work there because it's too obvious. Those who say Amr of Mari, my time Amr Rabbanon Makom Lavesim. Why did the rabbis say? I think it's a similar thing. I think the point is that the Raksa dinar, or even I guess a specific place on the seashore would not be considered significant. Because we say that just like you lost a barrel in this place, so did your friend. Okay. There was a person who found some tar in a wine press? What's the BavaMetzia? No, anybody? No, yeah, no, yeah, I don't know, yeah, no, yeah. Wait, what's a BavaMetzia? Who can tell me what a BavaMetzia is? Do I need to look it up? Is it matzarta? Gas. Oh, great, that doesn't help me. A gas. Beis Habad is a olive press. I think a gat. No, I think a gat. I think it's a wine press. I think. Okay. Also, the Rav, he comes for Rav. Amle zil shkol inavshach. He says, go and you can take it for yourself. Chazid ava karmachasem. And but Rav saw that this guy, he was not sure, why is Rav really giving him the right advice? So Amle zil plog le lechia bri. Rav was so certain that he was correct. He says, look, go. You can go and split it with my son. Chia, it's definitely takeable. What is it? Minay. Fine, split it with him. Lema kasav Rav makom lave simin. So is it possible that Rav holds that place therefore would not be considered a simin? Yeah, but he saw that the tar was already growing stuff on it, which means that it's been sort of abandoned for long enough that you can assume that by that point already the owner was miya'eshit, and therefore if you find it you can keep it. That was daf Chav Gimel of Masechta BavaMetzia. There was some very interesting stuff on this daf. We saw machlokes in Rabba and Rava about simin asli doris. Is it considered a simin or not? Rabba says it is not. Rava says it is. And then we got up to some of those other things that are lost, right? That we said elu shalo. Very, very interesting stuff. Peace out.